Okay, can we just say Scott Baio gets the biggest dick award, not the banana hammock kind of dick. I mean, like,
currently
he's just a dick.
or back then?
Hello world is a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy. A whole lot of loving is what we'll be bringing. We'll make you happy.
Welcome to the Pop Culture Preservation Society, the podcast for people born in the big wheel generation whose favorite smells are Crayola, lip smackers, and mimeograph ink.
We believe our Gen X childhoods gave us unforgettable songs, stories, characters, and images. And if we don't talk about them, they'll disappear, like Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition.
And today, we will be saving the Super Bowl of celebrity reality shows, Battle of the Network Stars.
I'm Carolyn.
I'm Kristen.
And I'm Michelle. And we are your pop culture preservationists. I don't know about you guys, but for me, one of the best parts of doing this podcast is the research I get to do on each topic. And even better is when it involves watching old shows I loved, but I haven't seen in decades.
Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh,
I agree.
Yes.
I mean,
so
who
fun.
would think that I'd be sitting here as a 53-year-old woman watching Battle of the Network Stars?
Right.
And I can't stop.
Well, and that was funny. You should mention Battle of the Network Stars. That was one of my favorite episodes to research because I got to watch so many episodes of Battle of the Network Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's available on YouTube. But did we ever think we'd watch it again? Like, was that something that 2 years ago would have even entered your mind?
No.
And not only that, but it's your job, Michelle.
Yeah,
I mean, how awesome is that? It's your
I get
job.
paid real well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but it was so fun. And it's like one of those things that your brain, like, it's like your whole body, like all of the cells and all of the DNA and everything in your body just seem to realign when you watch one of those old shows.
Yes.
Do you guys feel like that? Like,
That's a good way of putting it, actually.
Yes.
I'll turn on whether it was like when we were doing 8 is Enough or when we were doing Battle of the Network Stars. You watch it, you haven't seen it in decades, and it all just feels right. It's like everything gets back in order in your body, and you're like, oh, sure, I haven't watched this in 35 years, but yes, of course. Howard Cosell's voice, of course.
Yes.
You know?
Right. And you even come in contact with actual thoughts and feelings that you had 40 years ago, which is super trippy to me. Because this is the number one thought that I came into contact with, that I got reunited with. Oh my God, Ma Ingalls is in shorts. That's the number one thing. I'm watching it going, I remember when I saw this, and I was like, if I knew the words holy shit at that time, I would have said those words, but I was too young.
Exactly.
But her hair was down. That was what threw me, is her hair being down.
I agree. All of that. And not only was it one of my favorite episodes, it really ended up being one of our most downloaded episodes so far that we've done. So it wasn't just the three of us who wanted to get back in touch with our Battle of the Network Stars days. It was all of our listeners and followers as well. Mm-hmm. They really enjoyed it. And yeah, Karen Grassle, seeing her, because honestly, you guys, we had never seen like any of her skin besides her face and her hands. I mean, I guess maybe when we got to the leg one, I don't know if that episode.
When she tried to cut off her leg. But that was not her leg. It was a fake leg.
There you go.
And it was infected with gangrene.
And what's interesting is that now, that was back, that episode, our Battle of the Network Stars episode was episode 28, and it aired July 12th of 2021. And, way back in July of 2021, you guys, we didn't even know Karen Grassle yet. We hadn't even had
a close personal
conversations.
friend of ours.
Right. But it is true that, like, I remember in this episode, we talked about the shock at seeing Ma Ingalls out of her prairie skirts and that she had legs and everything. But what's interesting is now, having read her wonderful memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, turned to find out that, she was a very sexual being, and she was not Ma Ingalls. And we have an episode, coming up just in a couple weeks, you guys, where we are going to share with you our entire interview with Karen Grassle, and she gives us some very interesting dirt on Battle of the Network Stars. We can't tell you now, but we kind of like jaws open, right, you guys? We were like, wait, what?
They had a lot of fun on Battle of the Network Stars. And so it was fun hearing and reading her take on her experience there, which, there was a lot going on. And it was interesting, too. We had one of our followers, Rena Jones, had let us know that her husband went to Pepperdine and he worked in the security department part-time. And one of his favorite jobs ever was when they were filming Battle of the Network Stars, he got assigned to be with some of the stars, I guess kind of like a bodyguard or make sure they got where they needed to go. And one of his favorite memories is hanging out in the hot tub with Norman Fell. That was one of his celebrities he had to hang with.
Mr. Roper.
Yeah, Mr. Roper from Three's Company. So there was
I love
fun
Rena's
times.
husband, though, that's his favorite. Not like Ann Jillian or, or Jacqueline Smith. It's Norman Fell. Well, you know what? Norman Fell seems like he was probably a pretty fun guy to hang out with.
Yeah,
right?
I think a lot of fun happened outside of those games and the sports we watched with them. I think the behind the scenes, there was a lot of fun the stars were having.
And that was very gratifying to me, actually, to find out that they also really had a good time and really enjoyed it, because it was so special to us. It was like second only to Christmas for us. And it would have been such a bummer to hear like, oh, I gotta go do that stupid Battle of the Network Stars.
I mean,
again.
Karen talks, not to give too much away of the book, but like the training for it. Like there was some training that they did going into it, because some of these stars were, they led kind of a hard life off of the camera. They were doing a little, stuff here and there, and they had to kind of get in shape, some of them. But I think
well, let's say, some is the important word. Some people did.
Yes.
Some people did nothing. And we could tell.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, who was it in this? We talk about it in this episode.
Joan Van
Who
Ark.
was it? Yeah, the swimmer. Who
Joan
just
Van Ark.
basically
She can barely swim.
She almost drowned. Oh my gosh. It's a really fun episode, and it absolutely is one of my favorites of 2021, of our first year of podcasting. So, so for those of you new to the society, or for those of you who just want to revisit this really, really fun conversation, snap on your Speedos for this encore presentation of episode 28, Battle of the Network Stars.
Forget, if you will, the Olympic Games, Monday Night Football, championship fights. Conjure instead with the notion of Wonder Woman on the obstacle course, Kojak anchoring the tug-of-war, Farrah Fawcett Majors trying to be Sandra Palmer, Jimmy Walker spiking it for the point in volleyball, Adrienne Barbeau of Maud meeting every physical challenge. Yes, it's the most unique sports competition in history. The stars of primetime television vying for almost $400,000 and pride and self-respect. We call it the Battle of the Network Stars.
Welcome to our deep and thoughtful analysis of TV's most exciting and most jiggly celebrity competition reality show, The Battle of the Network Stars. The program made its debut in November of 1976 and offered an athletic competition between the primetime stars of the three big networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. That was it. That's all we had. And it was a genius idea that allowed them to both promote their shows and score big ratings during Sweeps Week. And Carolyn, I think our listeners know enough about you now to know that this must have been a dream come true for you.
Yes, it was. I'm sorry. I cannot wait for when Battle of the Network Stars came on TV. You guys, I know you've heard it, but I'm going to say it again. Seeing these celebrities out of their element and just being themselves and just interacting with each other. Somebody from the Waltons talking to somebody from 8 is Enough. Oh my gosh. It's like when you would see your teacher in the grocery store, like in different clothes and maybe with her husband and her kids. It just would blow your mind. It was such a rush for me. Almost scary how excited I sound as I'm talking about it, but it truly was a rush. Just realizing that these were regular people doing some things that we could do outside. They made me smile, like when I could see a shirtless Willie Ames struggling in the tug of war with those like veins popping out of his head and his teeth
so serious.
gritting, and Scott Baio in his face like yelling, Paul, Paul. So Team ABC could bring home the gold, or you guys, how about when we would see Ma Ingalls not
Oh,
in her
my
prairie
gosh.
skirt, but in a Speedo bathing suit?
Like, who was that?
Come
It was
on.
like that was almost a disturbing thing for me because you're you're at an age when you're a child that you sometimes can misconstrue fantasy and reality. We think of them as their characters, and to see Ma Ingalls in jogging shorts, much less running, unless there's like a fire in the barn, right? Or there's a rattler in the yard or something like that. I did not like it, but at the same time, it was very tittillating.
And with her cute little shoulder length
haircut.
Without the bun?
No bun.
No bonnet. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
It was crazy.
I loved this show so much, and I loved it exactly for the same reasons you did, Carolyn. And I think it was just that these people became real all of a sudden. Like, I mean, like you said, that was kind of disturbing, but at the same time, you could see their real personalities, and it was really fun. It was, we all kind of have admitted that we sort of lived in fantasy worlds, right? So, like, you could then really see Willie Ames as Willie Ames and not as Tommy, or, I could see Scott Baio as Scott Baio and not as Chachi, or we could see these people as their real self, and that just opened up a whole nother world for
like
our
they could be
for
your
our
boyfriend.
make-believe.
They
because then we got
actually
then
be
we,
your boyfriend.
Now teenagers have and preteens get to see their crushes who are maybe on a show. They get to see them on social media as their real self all the time. We didn't. We saw them in print magazines, but they weren't moving around. And I didn't stay up late enough really to watch interview shows, like if they were on the Tonight Show or anything.
Right. That's the
so
only
Battle
thing
of the
that
Network
where we would
Stars
see them real.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was so like, there they are. And, Christy McNichol and all these younger stars who you could see them as their real self. And then you could imagine them as your friend or your boyfriend or your husband, even that much more.
To me, it was a mashup between The Love Boat and Stars. They're just like us, right? When you have, you talked, Carolyn, last time about the excitement of that opening sequence of The Love Boat to see who were going to be the stars' faces that were going to appear in the porthole. And so that was the same thing with Battle of the Network Stars, except they are just like us because they're showing up as themselves. It was so exciting for me. I was always team ABC. I was Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy. And these are people that you already love, right? You see them in your living rooms once a week. They're like part of your family.
Yes. But I was going to say too, you guys, I don't know about you, but I also sometimes I had to look away, like the Speedos and stuff, like, and even at age 52, like, I don't want to know what Robin Williams is packing. No. I don't want to know, but I will say, you guys, I was watching last night. Can I just say that Howard Hessman was a little endowed?
What? You're kidding.
I didn't look away.
See, I totally agree with you about the banana hammock situation because there were some where like the Speedos were nicely packaged and just like it was really thick fabric. But other times like Ed Asner would come out with his tank top and his Speedo would be kind of loose and it would be like, it's kind of like seeing your principal in a Speedo.
I was telling my sister-in-law last night that I was watching Battle of the Network Stars, and my sister-in-law Susie texted back and she just said, that show embarrassed me to watch. It was the short shorts and braless runners.
Oh God, I know.
Because there was a lot of, you said it in the opening, Kristen, there was a lot of
jiggliness. Very jiggly.
And those swimsuits, those Speedo swimsuits were, they showcased their bodies beautifully, but I think they must have had pads because I will say in watching them, they never had any little nips.
No nips.
No. And even in the cold dunk take water, when they'd get out, they'd be screaming, it's so cold, it's so cold.
And I'd know when Farrah Fawcett was up that they were looking for the nipples.
They probably took Farrah Fawcett's pads out so she could make sure and showcase hers. But,
and let's just be clear, there were no sports bras back then. Right? So when Suzanne Summers is running the 50-yard dash, people are tuning in for another reason.
Yeah. And Adrienne Barbeau, that just looked painful.
I know.
Would be
I know. And I don't want to reduce them to that.
No.
But let's just be honest about when you hear the comments from the men on the other teams, comments that were totally accepted in the 70s, but now you're like, ouch, I don't think you should say that. Carolyn, you had your hand raised.
Oh, sorry. That was just the fact that I did see my principal in a Speedo once. And that's a true story.
Oh no.
I know. It's even crazier because to all my Bishop Eustace friends out there, do you remember seeing Father Angelo?
No.
With his gold chain and Speedo at our senior high trip to Florida.
That's really inappropriate.
It wasn't like an athletic situation. You were going on the beach with Father Guido Sarducci?
With Father?
I didn't hear you say his name. I'm sorry.
Father Angelo.
Yes.
One of the producers did say, did we get stars on that were attractive? Did we go for the Gillian Andersons and the Farrah Fawcett's and the Jacqueline Smiths? Sure, we did. But at the same time, he's trying to, backpedal and say, but really, we just, anybody goes. And I'm thinking, when I watch that, they're all stunning. However, think about the 70s. At the time, they were all stunning. Even, Penny Marshall, who you might say you can't put next to Farrah Fawcett without, comparing, she looked fantastic in her Speedo swimsuit. So I feel
and it's almost like when you look at it from that perspective, it's almost like this is a little time capsule of what we expected women to look like. Because like you said, they were beautiful and most of them were skinny, but there were no hard bodies. So it was more like they were skinny by virtue of youth and genetics. It looked like they ate food. Right? There were no gyms back then. I think the standards now, it's pretty punishing to be a celebrity as far as what people are expected to look like.
I agree.
Yeah.
Did you guys want to go to Pepperdine University? I did. I totally did. And I here I'm at 18 years old. I'm like, maybe I should look at Pepperdine. I only know one thing about Pepperdine University. And that's where they had the Battle of the Network Stars. That's all I know.
Yeah.
That's the impact that it had on me.
Wow. I went to pom camp there when I was in high school, high school in Arizona. Wow. And we went to Pepperdine. And I remember thinking, hey, this is pretty cool. Kayak? Battle. Yeah, exactly. Felt like I needed to tug a war.
Okay. The whole idea was absurd. It was, you're taking artists, right? From the very dignified, like Caroline Ingalls or the silly, like Robin Williams, and you're making them do athletic events. The whole notion of it is very absurd. But we didn't regard it this way at all. We took it very, very seriously. This was not comedy. This was not a farce. We were taking it as a serious sporting competition.
Yeah, and ABC actually tried to take it a little seriously, too, in that they purposely chose Howard Cosell to be the host, which he did for 18 of the 19 episodes. And at the time, he was to sports what Walter Cronkite was to the news. And to have him and that voice kind of lent a little bit of credibility to the show. And he took it very seriously.
Yeah, he did.
He did some behind-the-scenes interviews with some of those stars that we saw. He was like the Barbara Walters of Battle of the Network Stars.
Robin Williams, the figure from Hawk, the man who's starring in Mork and Mindy. There's his background for you. This is a young man who has really startled everybody with his emergence into national prominence.
I'm trying to stay the same. I live out past Zoom and I just go out there and hide. Just live that quiet life.
When did you decide you wanted to be a performer?
About 4 years ago, actually. I was going to Juilliard School of Acting. That's what I made the decision then. Then I left school after 3 years and started taking up stand-up comedy as a release.
And they gave him some fun co-hosts to kind of bounce things off of. And I'll put fun in quotation marks because some of them, like O.J. Simpson, not sure that would be fun anymore. But he had different co-hosts throughout the series of the show. Everybody from Bruce Jenner then, who at that time was the greatest athlete in the world, having come off the decathlon. Then we go to have Suzanne Summers in later times, Frank Gifford, Billy Crystal.
Here's Billy.
You set a record in that lane, and now you've chosen to run in this lane. Any particular reason?
No.
I've never seen you more determined for anything in my life. This is
I love sports. So,
well, good luck. I'll get out of your way.
Okay.
He was also giving us a little backstory, little factoids here and there. It was kind of like watching People magazine. Like, I did not know that Jan Smithers from WKRP in Cincinnati was discovered on a beach in Malibu and became the cover girl for this think piece in a magazine about teenagers on the beach. What will their lives become? And from there, she becomes a big star. I learned that from Howard Cosell.
He's a fixture in our generation. if you watch sports with, your parents or from Battle of the Network Stars, that's really how I know him.
Yeah.
I didn't have a dad around that watched sports. So it's kind of embarrassing to say, Howard, if you say Howard Cosell, my first thought is, Battle of the Network Stars.
Of course.
But
that would be me
That's
too.
what I associate him with.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But even he did elevate the experience to something to be taken seriously. But there's no way that you can look at Parker Stevenson like running his ass off with a twisted ankle, and he's running toward the finish line like he's actually trying to get a real gold medal, and your brain does a backflip. Like, what is happening? That is Frank Hardy.
But that's what I was saying earlier. What I loved about it is that on Battle of the Network Stars, it wasn't Frank Hardy. It was Parker Stevenson, who I actually liked. I've said in this podcast before, I was assigned him by my sister. Sort of felt like a dad to me, but he was my boyfriend.
And I learned that he was the captain of the crew team at Harvard, I believe, was his alma mater. So, when he hopped in that inflatable kayak, he was able to bring Team ABC. They were already losing, but he was able to bring them close to second place.
So he's one of this is where you get to find out which athletes actually have some athletic prowess and which ones do not, because there were no requirements for being a part of this show. No experience required. There was zero training required. And it was potentially awkward and unflattering. Like we said, there were no gyms back then, but people were like, come on, let's do it. I mean, to see, sometimes it was like watching your mom run, which she might be doing it fine, but you've just never seen it before, and so it looks kind of weird. Like when you see Gabe Kaplan, when you see Mr. Cotter running to the finish line, it just looks so funny. And it turns out Gabe Kaplan was a really good runner. Like, who knew?
He was a collegiate track runner. He ran track in college.
Who knew? But that was the appeal of it. I loved it.
I was watching an episode last night, and it was the relay race, and it's Dick Van Patten against Ed Asner. And there's just something about watching those two just sprint like, they're being chased.
For ABC, Dick Van Patten and Ed Asner for CBS. And there they go. And Dick Van Patten is overtaking Ed Asner in the outside lane with ease. Aaron Gray trying to hold together, but falling behind. Van Patten will pass off to Christy McNichol, giving her a good lead.
I couldn't stop laughing. And then I thought, they're so old. And then I thought, geez, they're probably our age. They were probably our age at the time.
That was 50 years ago. Well, 45 years ago.
Oh my God. They were probably younger than we were.
They were probably younger than us.
we are.
And poor Joan Van Ark. Oh my God. Joan Van Ark should not have been in the pool. And here you have this very serious swimming relay, and they're just swimming their hearts out. And then Joan Van Ark, she dives off of the starting block, and the poor girl starts doing the sidestroke. And Howard Cosell, yes, she does. And Howard Cosell is like, Joan Van Ark, she can barely swim. She just barely makes it to the other side.
Well, his commentary was always funny because it was always like that, very pointed and kind of rude, but it made you laugh. But
it totally
having
did.
said that, did you guys notice, or people listening, if you've gone back and watched, not many of them off the starting block did anything but a belly flop on the way in.
Yeah.
And almost every single one of them, you just go, you just kind of cringe when you see them land on the water because they all just belly flop.
It makes you wonder if they showed up that day having not been in a pool since they were children. I mean, seriously, I don't think anybody required any practice from any of them, except for Robert Conrad. Apparently, he was quite the taskmaster, and he required people to train, and then that started to freak people out.
Well, I will say that, they took it seriously. I think it was Karen Grassle, Ma Ingalls, who said she did it originally because she was weary of always dragging around prairie skirts. So any opportunity to get out of the skirt, she was all in. She was for. Yeah. But she said at first they all thought, this will just be a lark. This is just going to be silly and fun. But then you got there, and she said none of them wanted to look like idiots. So they took it really seriously. Yeah. And then she said, plus, there was a lot of money on the table.
And that is why they agreed to risk their dignity, right? Because they could look like complete fools. If I was super famous and somebody asked me to be on the Battle of the Network Star, I'd be like, that's a hard no, unless you've got like a walking around the block race, then maybe I could show up. But otherwise, I'm going to look like a fool. But there was a lot of money on the table, like you said. They got $10,000 just for showing up for the day, no matter how they did. And you got $20,000 if your team won. And in those days, I know that sounds like, you could buy a bike for $10,000 nowadays, especially in the pandemic when you can't get a bike. But in those days, they didn't get the salaries that TV stars get today. It was significantly less. And some of them probably actually needed the money.
Yeah, Tim Reed, who was on WKRP in Cincinnati, said he used the money he recorded an album. He was on WKRP, but he needed that money to do to have other ventures that he wanted to do.
It really wasn't until Seinfeld when people started asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars per episode. And then it comes to Friends, and then they want $1 million per episode. But then that sort of relates to, remember in our last episode, we talked about how there were more and more commercials required in a show. And that took away from the theme songs. Well, that's because the actors are now asking for $1 million per episode. Right. That's not what it was with Happy Days.
Right.
You know what's interesting, you guys? They all got $10,000 just for showing up. They got $20,000 if they won. Is that what it was? I thought it was like 30 or 40. Is it just 20?
I thought it was 20.
But what's different about that is that today, that would be, and because they make more money today, but that would be viewed as very selfish. Like today they would be doing that and all that money would be going to charity.
That is true.
I was actually very shocked when I learned that, wait, they got to pocket the money and
I agree.
We knew that.
Yes, it wasn't like, Celebrity Family Feud now where we're donating our money to the, Habitat for Humanity or something. Yeah.
That is interesting. I don't think it's a reflection of our views in society. I think it's a reflection of how much money they make.
I do too, because today that would seem very gross if we saw them doing a competition show like Family Feud or a Battle of the Network Stars type show, and we knew they were getting to pocket the money. We would all say that's disgusting.
And we didn't talk about how much money they were getting per episode because it wasn't that newsworthy. Now it's newsworthy because they're asking for $1 million.
You guys, I wanted to be one of those cheerleaders so badly. That each network had cheerleaders, and they basically just sort of flounced around with the giant pom-poms of the day. The pom-poms back then were enormous. They looked like giant Muppets or something. And they would just be like, had all these cute little cheers for ABC, and they would have the right colors. And I remember when I was watching those episodes the past couple nights, it just reminded me like, oh, I remember how much I wanted to be a cheerleader and cheer for Happy Days.
That's so funny that you bring that up because I was also taken with the cheerleaders right now. I wasn't back then, but this time around, I'm watching it, and the reason that I'm so captivated with them, and this is going to tell you where I am in my life, is I was fascinated with how their boobs were not moving. Like, they were just stationary. And I'm like, I can't take a breath without a boob hitting me in the face, right? Like,
well, that's your menopause. That's your menopause,
right,
Kristen.
Right.
We've discussed this in private.
I mean, we talk about what bras we're buying all the time because you just need to get the right one to hold things down. And those cheerleaders were just like bouncing, and nothing moved.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so great.
Well, I wanted to be, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a cheerleader when I grew up. Like, how pathetic is that?
Yes.
When people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a cheerleader. And that's ridiculous.
I had so much fun with Simon Says. And I want to talk a little bit about Simon Says because my sister and I would play it. And on the show, they called in like a professional Simon Says caller. I mean, this guy was not fooling around. I was watching them last night. It was hard. But my sister and I would try to see who could win, who could last the longest standing in front of our television. And I was reliving this with her the other night. And she said, yeah, I did that. That was the only thing I liked doing with you that night because you would never let me have Team ABC. You always said, Carol or Ronnie, I am Team ABC. You have to have one of the other ones.
You couldn't share a team?
Big sisters, son.
No, she said she hated when Battle of the Network Stars was on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ronnie.
I crushed it for Ronnie.
Oh, my God.
Horrible.
Because you took ABC.
Yeah, and I was very set on the fact that she had to have someone else so we could be against each other. And only
You're
one winner.
competitive.
Yes.
I did not know that.
It was not pretty, evidently, according to her, and I'm embarrassed. So the only bright moment she had during Battle of the Network Stars was when we played Simon Says, because I guess we were more on an even playing field at that point. But
you had no advantage over her with Simon
You
Says.
can't play Simon Says with that Simon Says caller. He's tough. He tricks them.
Yeah.
he did.
He's tricky. You know, when we went to birthday parties or at school and we played Simon Says, it was very benign. It was very Simon Says, raise your foot. Simon Says, put it down. Raise your other foot. This guy was like no joke. Listeners, please go Google Battle of the Network Stars Simon Says if you don't remember it. I still, as an adult, am sort of like incensed. Like, that's not fair. He tricks them. And then some of them, they get out and especially the females, if they give him a kiss, he lets them back in.
Ew.
That's disgusting.
Ew.
I
Oh
agree,
my
but
God.
then
Welcome
I saw
to
that
the 70s.
William Shatner gave him a kiss so he could come back in.
Oh, funny.
I love that.
Shatner went up and grabbed him and just planted
Isn't
one
that
on
interesting,
him.
though? It was, you would think that it would be the lightest part of the show, and it was not light at all. It was very, very stressful. And there's this one part where it wasn't the actual caller, it was Joe Namath, and Joe Namath is getting up in Mr. T's face, and he's like, scratch your head, right in his face. And Mr. T is standing there looking straight ahead, and he's not moving, because Joe Namath didn't say Simon Says. And it didn't seem weird to me at all.
You guys, I loved obviously we all love the obstacle course. Listeners probably all love the obstacle course. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you said dunk tank, not a sport. Not a sport. I totally agree. But I loved watching the dunk tank. And I think it was because that's when you could really see their faces. And they yelled at each other. And they're like, I was watching one and she's yelling at Scott Baio, like, you can't do it, Scott. You can. And, he proceeds to dunk her 3 times in a row. It all seemed to be in good fun. They, rarely did you see them getting really upset with each other. Sometimes when someone got eliminated or penalized on the obstacle course, they would get really mad. Yeah.
And
But
Asner was really upset about the starting blocks being wobbly. His starting block was wobbly, but nobody else's was wobbly. And the inflatable kayak was the worst. That was the worst. There was no way to look good in that kayak.
This is a difficult and challenging event. You must keep that boat in balance, not overstroke, not put that blade in too deeply. And John Davidson manifesting just what we're reporting with a quick early lead while Joan Van Ark is in trouble, as you can see in this panoramic shot. And bringing up second place at the present time is a surprisingly steady Lynn Redgrave.
You can't make it go straight. You can't keep it in your lane. And people just you'd have to get in all these awkward, dehumanizing positions. It was a very neutering event. Like, there was no way that you could maintain your dignity. It was just all your celebrity got washed off.
You can't get out of it without looking like a flopping fish.
Foolish.
You just have to flop yourself over.
Why did they have to have the little puffy blow-up kayaks? Couldn't they have had a real kayak that wouldn't look so stupid?
No, because the inflatable ones they're less stable and there's more fun.
Yeah, it's funnier. Melissa Gilbert had a good strategy, though. She jumped in, but she was tiny at the time. She was about 13. She jumped in on her knees, and so she was on her knees, paddling as fast as she could. And then when she flopped out, I think it was Hal Holbrook had to get in, and he was like giant. His legs are straight out in front of him. He's like basically leaning back, and
like he's going down the river.
Yes,
he's going tubing.
Yeah, and then they're about to sink when they.
You guys, it's really fun to watch as adults. Don't you agree?
It was super
Didn't you
fun.
have fun going back and prepping
fun
for this episode? So listeners, all our friends out there, go back and watch it as adults. We all have great memories.
It's hilarious.
And for those of you listening, that's why we didn't have, this wasn't even scheduled in season 2, but our society has been so vocal about how much they loved this show that we thought, we've got to do a Battle of the Network Stars. So I would really encourage you to go back. A lot of episodes are the full episodes available on YouTube, or just even a 2-minute clip. It's really funny as an adult to go back and watch it.
Yeah, and you'll see why you loved it. I mean, it's just, it's all the stuff we talked about before. It's like field day at your school when you get to see all your teachers in shorts. And it's not just the athletes at your school
Father
that are
Guido
competing.
in a Speedo.
Right, Father Guido in the Speedo.
I'm sorry, Father Angelo.
Right.
That's right.
It's like you get to see all of your kids competing, not just the athletes. Plus, hopefully your principal won't put on a Speedo. Okay, I have to go back to the tug of war, because the tug of war was my favorite. I loved the tug of war. And I remember thinking, if Lou Ferrigno is on your tug of war team, is that fair? I just wondered if that was fair. And
sure.
And LeVar Burton said, in the same vein, when he lost, because he's pissed about it, and he's like, but they had Grizzly Adams. How is that fair? But I started understanding that there was strategy involved with the tug-of-war, that they always had the Grizzly Adams or the Ed Asner or the Lou Ferrigno as the anchor. I learned the word anchor.
I'm just laughing. They would have the Lou Ferrigno, the Dan Haggerty, or the Ed Asner.
Well, he's big, right?
I'm laughing that those three
He's
are
Santa
the same.
Claus. He's tiny.
Yes, he is Santa Claus.
Just poor, because still.
But he
that
was the
seems
anchor.
old to me.
He
That
was
is
the
funny
anchor.
though,
I know.
Carolyn, because I don't really
But it's
compare.
funny.
You don't think of Grizzly Adams, Lou Ferrigno, and then Ed Asner.
Ed
as being
Asner
three
and Lou
greats.
Grant. I started to understand that there was a proper way to play tug-of-war. First of all, you have an anchor. I learned the word anchor. And then the people who are just like pulling willy-nilly, they're not going to win. You have to pull in unison. And so when you have Lou Ferrigno at the back going, pull, pull, and Valerie Bertinelli is like pulling alongside Lou Ferrigno, and they're doing it all at the same side, at the same time, I'm like, they're going to win. There is a strategy to playing tug-of-war.
Right. Did we know that as kids, or did we learn that as adults watching it?
I had no idea. I learned that from Battle of the Network Stars. I totally learned that. And then when it was over, there was something very real, because the tug-of-war destroyed them. And they would be like lying on the ground, and they couldn't look at the camera. It was the most real moment of Battle of the Network Stars, the tug-of-war.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I liked watching the tug-of-war. I hated it on field day as a kid. Like if our class was in the finals and our class had to go do the tug-of-war.
That was the worst.
It was the worst, and my hands burned. And I'm not athletic. I didn't want to be in the tug-of-war team. And I just remember the feeling of that rope on my hands.
Yeah.
Or how about when you knew it was over? Like, you'd been pulling for so long, and then you just all are going
and then everybody,
forward,
your little feet are trying to get traction, but they can't.
And the rope starts pulling the wrong way through your hands. You're like, no. Well, and at my
That's true,
school,
though, you guys. There's always a very telling moment when the tug-of-war is all over. It
It's
always
over.
starts pretty,
It's
and then all of
over.
a sudden there's that 1 second that it's just like, that's all she wrote. And that other team just goes flying.
And apparently there was a weight limit for your team at the Battle of the Network Stars. You had to have the same weight on both sides. So then I guess it doesn't really matter if Lou Ferrigno was on your team or not. And I guess William Devane, he was one of the captains, and their team was like 1 pound overweight. And so then, of course, what do you have to do? You have to eliminate a player. But he's like, nope, we're not eliminating a player. Everybody to the porta potties. Everybody, you got to get rid of something right now. I don't want you coming back here until you've purged everything out of your body. They came back, they reweighed them, and they were underweight.
Okay, that's the best story.
Isn't that great?
Ever.
Yeah, William Devane, brilliant.
Also,
Brilliant.
watching like William Devane, watching him and going back again, I'm going to say it again, as adults, I am cracking up at how young all these people, Frank Gifford, just, Frank Gifford's dead. I mean, so many of them are dead that we're watching, but just watching even the people that aren't dead that we love, they're so young. And it's so fun to watch them.
And we thought they were so old.
And the women's voices, watching Jacqueline Smith be interviewed, her voice even, for those of you who don't know, Carolyn got us all at the beginning of our podcast. We had a cameo from Jacqueline Smith, and she said the Pop Culture Preservation Society. She's so elegant, and her voice is so mature and
she
elegant.
Might be listening.
Classy.
Shout out to her.
Yes,
She
Jacqueline,
might be.
we love you. And
we'll
she
just assume.
could not be more beautiful and classy today.
Mm-hmm.
But watching a 1978 Jacqueline Smith, and her voice is so young too. And it's a beautiful thing.
And I do the math because I look at them on the Battle of the Network Stars in 1978, and those are the people that I know. And I do the math, and I'm like, oh my God, that was 45 years ago.
Don't do that,
I know. It's not a good equation. It's not a good equation. Okay, so the kayak, the tug-of-war was my favorite, but the scariest one for me was the tandem bicycle race. Also not a sport. That's a tandem bicycle is something you do at a picnic. It's not a sport. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to call me and yell at me. Nonetheless, the thing about the tandem bike is that the pedals have to go at the same rate. And so if you're not pedaling at the same rate, like if somebody's going way faster and you can't keep up, you're screwed. You just have to take your feet off the pedals.
That is very difficult.
It's very difficult. And Ma Ingalls was one of the people, I'm sorry, she has a name. Karen Grassle said, Karen Grassle was on a tandem bicycle with Larry Wilcox from Chips. And he was just a powerhouse in front. And he just made those pedals go so fast. She's like, I couldn't keep my feet on the pedals. So finally she just gave up. She put her feet up on the frame of the bike and just let Larry Wilcox take her into the finish line.
Isn't that cheating?
No, because sometimes there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And there was actually a really scary bike crash because the same thing happened to Lorenzo Lamas. He couldn't keep his feet on the pedals. And
was he with like Ann Jillian? Like the pairing of these people is cracking me up.
It's hilarious. Ann Jillian from It's a Living. It's a Living. I love that show. Yeah. So apparently Ann Jillian was the powerhouse in that equation, and Lorenzo Lamas couldn't keep up with her. And so his feet are flying and they're getting stuck in the pedals and they veer off the what's it called? A track. And they crash. It was very scary to me.
Wait, was it really Ann Jillian? I just came up with that. I just threw that name out there. Oh, it was?
I think it was.
Well, the producer of the show, you guys, he says that they started just towards the end, just throwing out new ideas. And he says things like the tandem bike.
Oh, God.
Tandem bike race. They didn't even have the proper type of track for that. So you're supposed to have, you're not supposed to just be able to fly off into a ditch. He kind of admits, like, there were some things we just were sort of like, let's do that. Oh, here's a nice road they can ride down.
I'm so glad you say that because that's part of why it was so scary is because they're trying to turn the corner on this dirt track with these very long bicycles. And this is geometry, people. This is geometry. You're not going to be able to get around that corner with that big bike when you're going at that speed, especially when it's only Larry Wilcox who can pedal. And eventually they just go, it was frightening. It was harrowing.
Well, and on the same note, I guess when the whole thing started, the producers had to kind of convince all the producers of the television shows that all these stars are coming from. Listen, we promise they're not going to get injured because the producers of, Happy Days and WKRP and Little House on the Prairie, they were a little bit worried. They were a little bit like, wait, what? All of our stars are going to compete? Like they're going to come back with a broken leg or a concussion and they're not going to be able to act. And I guess they say that the worst that happened was like a sprained ankle.
I can't believe that. I cannot believe that.
I know. Wow.
That's so crazy.
I just want to interject. I'm having so much fun. This is like the best episode ever. I'm just like visualizing Larry Wilcox he did not do great in the inflatable kayak. So I'm glad to know that he was really just tearing it up there on the bike.
He kicked ass on the tandem bike.
And Lorenzo Lamas just with his feet up.
But with Ma Ingalls on his behind him.
Yes, just putting her feet up on the frame.
Holding on for dear life.
I mean, you got, the California Highway Patrol and Caroline Ingalls just, where else? It's just joyful.
Yeah. And when you watch the tandem bike race, you see, like, there'll be a whole slew of people on the back with their legs sticking straight out. And that means I've lost control. I cannot keep my feet on the pedals anymore.
Oh, my gosh.
That would be me.
Okay, the star/athletes, the strathletes, if you will. Did you guys have favorites?
Of course. Absolutely. I would say that mine were more the younger stars. Surprise, surprise, Scott Baio. If you've been listening to this for a while, you know that, Chachi was my husband. And I loved Valerie Bertinelli, but I also had a girl crush on her. I loved One Day at a Time. So Valerie Bertinelli, Christina, all the ones that I'm sure you guys are going to say. One that I think that I'm surprised by, going back and watching some, I saw this actress and I thought, oh, I loved her. And it was Erin Gray. Erin Gray. Now, I knew her. She was at the time, she was in, I think, Buck Rogers. But I don't know if maybe that's where I knew her because my memory of Erin Gray is more Silver Spoons. But that's going to come later. I remember her, though, on Battle of the Network Stars. I just thought she was beautiful. And she is. She's beautiful. And she's quite the athlete.
She's very
I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. But, yeah, I would say growing up, I didn't pay much attention to the older stars. But you guys watching it now, holy shit. Hello, Greg Evigan. Where have you been my whole life? And Gil Gerard? Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, though, as a child, I had an older man crush on Richard Hatch because, I mean, Zowie, that man
Richard
is
Hatch.
easy to look at. And when I, now the past couple nights watching them back, I was like, oh, yeah, good job, Michelle. You had good taste because he's a pretty man. Yeah.
He was a pretty
What
man.
about you guys? Who did you love?
My favorite
to
was
watch?
definitely Penny Marshall. And I think part of it was because she was natural in the way that she moved. She was a naturally funny person, but she was also natural in the way that she moved, like Christy McNichol, so that it wasn't uncomfortable for me. I didn't worry about her, and she wasn't going to ruin her dignity, and she wasn't going to embarrass herself. And I just liked Laverne in general, so I always kept my eye on her.
Yes, I loved her too. And I loved Gabe Kaplan because I thought he was so smart. So as you already know, except for one season, I was Team ABC all the time, except for the one time Jimmy McNichol was on because he was representing the Fitzpatricks or California Fever. He was Team CBS. So that was my only time liking CBS. So that to be said, I just thought Gabe Kaplan was so smart and he was a good athlete too. So when he was the captain, I just knew ABC was going to win. So I just would be thrilled to see. And Gabe Kaplan is the captain because I thought we're not losing this time. And then last night I was, what? Go ahead.
So many tube socks. I don't know why, but when I think of Gabe Kaplan, I just picture like his big afro and the tube socks, the mustache and the tube socks. It's just so funny.
Well, and when I was watching last night, again, coming back to the inflatable kayak, I felt like it was, sometimes I'll watch YouTube videos of people falling on ice because I think it's so funny. And
oh my God, Caroline.
I know that's awful, but supposedly they never get hurt
right, you
and
do.
stuff. Yeah, I just like those fail things. So that's what the inflatable kayak was kind of like. People would just be all whatever, and it was hysterical. But he was one of my favorites, but also in that same race, Captain and Tennille were two of the stars that were
because
doing
they had a
the inflatable
variety
kayak.
show.
Yes, and let
I
me tell
forgot
you,
about
Tony
them.
Tennille, she could really row that inflatable kayak. She was the
she was
first leg for
coordinated.
Team ABC, and she could do it because it was really hard to go around the thing at the end.
Yeah, you have to
and
go
come
around
back.
the
That's
buoy.
where- yeah.
You have to have
And
actual
she-
paddling skills to get around that
Yes.
thing. And most
She
people
did a
don't
good
have
job.
paddling skills. We
You know,
in Minnesota
Captain,
know that.
surprisingly, Captain was not a good paddler.
Not a-
Daryl Dragon did
Yeah.
not have
Ironically.
some good paddle skills. That's right.
I have a fun question for you guys. Can I ask you guys a question really quick? Do you guys know which star had the most appearances on Battle of the Network Stars?
Oh, I think Scott Baio could be up there.
Okay. What do you think, Carolyn?
I'm going to have to go with Scott as well.
I'm going to tell you Scott was second. So does that change your answer? Scott has the second most appearances.
Okay. Ed Asner. I'm going with Ed Asner.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Christy McNichol. I know that's not
Okay,
it, though.
you guys, I'm about to blow your minds.
Oh my God, what is
Charlene Tilton, who played Little Lucy Ewing on Dallas.
Dallas.
She
was
has
also Wendy Springer on
She
Ain't It
has,
Enough.
I think, 8 appearances.
What?
Scott Baio, I think, has 6 or 7. Mhm.
Okay.
Scott Baio thinks he has the most appearances. And he
course
also
he
thinks he
does.
holds the record for the men's obstacle course, which he doesn't.
Okay,
I'll
can
tell
we
you
just
about that in a
say
minute.
Scott Baio gets the biggest dick award, not the banana hammock kind of dick. I mean, like
Currently
he's just a dick.
or back then?
Back then. Okay,
Both.
what you just
both.
mentioned.
Let's say both.
Yes. Okay, yes, both.
Sorry,
What
that's
you
just
just
our
mentioned,
opinion.
like he thinks he's all that. He thinks he's Mr. Obstacle Course. I'm not denying that he was good on the obstacle course, but he doesn't hold the freaking record. And
He
here's
thinks he
a
does.
quote. He thinks he does. Yeah, he thinks a lot of things, apparently. So here's a quote from Scott Baio today. Like, not back then when people said shitty things about women, but today. He is quoted as saying, "We always got upset that there had to be women on the team because none of them could catch a football, and they were always upset about their makeup. Well, most of them anyway." And then there's also a quote from Ann Jillian, Ann Jillian's going to win the day. There's another quote from her talking about a pass thrown by him that was just a super shitty pass. Like, he was supposed to throw it to her. He throws it to the other side of the football field, and she has to hustle to go all the way across the field to get his shitty pass. And so she digs into her dancer training, and she does like a big jeté leap. She gets the ball. She falls to the ground, clinging the ball to her chest. And the crowd just goes nutty because nobody thought that anybody could catch that shitty Scott Baio pass.
Okay, I have one more fun question for you, though.
Yeah.
Do you know which star they wanted to get, but they never got?
Oh, Mary Tyler Moore.
That's
Carolyn?
a good one. I'm going to say Michael Landon.
Oh, that's a good answer, too. Both are excellent answers. Unfortunately, they're wrong. John Travolta. Never got John Travolta, but they really wanted to get him. And they just think that
Vinnie Barbarino.
The producer says by the time Battle of the Network Stars started, Saturday Night Fever had been released or was just being released. And they don't know. They just think that his agent, his people just thought he was already too big. He didn't need it.
He didn't want to do it because he wasn't a very good athlete and he did not want to embarrass himself. Oh. He said, I can dance, but I can't do anything else.
He could have done some of those things, though.
He could have gotten in a goddamn inflatable kayak.
Well, remember, you guys remember the whole segment of Danny Zuko trying to run track?
Yes. Oh my God. With his Converse high tops on.
So maybe it was a good decision, John Travolta.
That would be in the awkward running competition. Acting. Yeah. Okay, so apparently Joan Collins wore pantyhose under her jogging shorts and her tube socks.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Wouldn't you love to see that?
Okay, I have a couple of other just stats. Do you guys want to know some of the favorites and the fan favorites and what they excelled in? So we all know, I think we can all agree, Christy McNichol is
queen.
Just a favorite of all of ours and listeners too. And in Battle of the Network Stars, she was a beast. Even her first race was in 1977. Even at that first race, when she was just 14 years old, she was all of 4 feet 11 inches.
Wow.
She weighed 75 pounds, and you guys, this we know. Why? Because they posted their weights on the screen.
Isn't that crazy?
Can you believe that?
Did they do that for the men, too, or just the women?
No, I think... I'm sure everybody.
Okay.
Anyway, she just killed on the obstacle course. At 4'11", 75 pounds, she set a record then. And she beat Ma Ingalls twice.
Yeah. Ma Ingalls on the obstacle course, that's one of those moments where you get really uncomfortable.
Oh, I love it.
And Christy McNichol was a joy to watch because she was so natural. You
so cute.
Enjoyed watching her run that obstacle course. And you didn't get uncomfortable like watching Joan Van Ark doing the side stroke in the pool.
And like we talked about in our Christy McNichol episode, we love her because she's so real and we all related to her. And watching Howard Cosell interview her and ask her questions.
Most of my friends feel, like I'm a normal kid because I am. My fans feel that I'm real special and everything, which is nice and everything, but I like to be treated normal. I don't like to be treated different.
We're not going to treat you anything but normal in the Battle of the Network Stars. You better come through. You understand?
Yep.
She's just she's well-spoken and she seems so real and calm. She actually only did 3 battles, 2 in 1977 and 1 in 1979.
Oh, that's it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, those are indelible memories then. She must have made an impression.
Absolutely.
Because in my mind, she was in every single one.
Yeah. And then, of course, Scott Baio, who at the time we liked, or I liked. I mean, I don't know if you guys, I think you guys liked. I mean, we liked to watch him at the time.
thought he was cute. I didn't know he was a dick.
Oh, my God. So Scott Baio made 6 appearances. He set the record on the obstacle course for men until Mark Harmon beat him in 1982. Scott Baio. Wah, wah. Speaking of hot men, Mark Harmon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I claim him back from way back in the day.
Are him and Pam Dauber still married? Speaking of,
they are
so cute.
Married. Oh, that makes me really happy.
Aren't they adorable?
Okay, and in 1983, Scott Baio had the mullet of the century.
Okay, Valerie Bertinelli, just always adorable. And to this day, we love her.
Oh, yeah. Wolfie's mom. That's how I literally think of her now. She's Wolfie's mom. I love Wolfie. I love Wolfie's mom. I love Eddie.
Valerie Bertinelli participated in 4 battles, and she excelled at the obstacle course. Melissa Gilbert was in 5. From 13 years old to 17 years old. And she's just kind of known for being just an all-around good athlete. Erin Gray was the kayak queen, actually, and she was only in 3.
You know what? The reason she could be the kayak queen is because she has proportions that would allow her to not get into those awkward, dehumanizing positions. She could fold herself in a way and get the paddles in the water so that she didn't look like a fool.
Well, and don't you think too, if you've done one battle and you're going to come back and do another one, you're buying yourself an inflatable kayak with that $10,000, and you're getting in your pool in your backyard and you're practicing.
I'm going to get a pool and then I'm going to get a kayak.
Yes, $10,000 should cover it. Okay, and then Gregory Harrison from Trapper John MD, he was actually an avid surfer and swimmer, so he excelled in the pool. And he came from behind in 1980 in one of the swim races. He came from behind to beat Scott Baio.
Yes.
And the crowd went
Way
crazy.
to go, Trapper John.
That's
Yes.
Here's a
But
really
did he
fun
beat
fact.
Joan Van Ark?
I don't know. Yeah. Yes. Let's say yes.
We'll assume.
Fun fact about Gregory Harrison, he met his wife, Randy Oakes from Chips, on Battle of the Network Stars.
Wait, Trapper John is married to Randy Oakes
Well,
from Chips?
I don't know if he still is, but he was. That's where
I
they
didn't
met.
know that.
And Randy Oakes actually holds the record for the most dunks in the dunk tank. She was dunked 16 times.
Oh.
Okay, and the last one, this is one of you guys' favorites, Judy Norton-Taylor from the Waltons.
Yes. Mary
Is
Ellen.
known, yes, and she was in 3 battles, and she is pretty recognized for being one of the best females in Battle of the Network Stars history. When they played 3-on-3 football, Judy Norton-Taylor made 4 touchdown catches. And that was a big deal. Yeah.
Carolyn, you want to take us down the rabbit hole?
Yay!
I would love to, but I would also like to qualify with I don't want a timer or anything this time because my information is too exciting to have to.
We know this episode means so much to you that we're going to
give it to you.
Put you on a timer. You get as much time as you want.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate.
We'll cut
that.
our boob stories for you.
Right.
We'll edit out our boob stories for you.
I knew I loved you guys. Okay, well, I did try to keep it thematic, my rabbit hole, so it does kind of fall under the fact that Battle of the Network Stars had a ripple effect in some programming on television, and some other shows kind of were offshoots or competition kind of shows. So first, I want everybody to know that the Laugh Olympics was a direct offshoot of Battle of the Network Stars. So if you remember
Scooby-Doo
Like
Laugh
the
Olympics,
cartoon.
yes, the cartoon, Laugh Olympics, Hanna-Barbera characters. We had Team Scooby-Doobies, Yogi Yahooies,
Oh my God.
and
That's
the
right.
Really Rottens. And they competed against each other for the gold, silver, and bronze Olympic medals.
Okay, read
And
me
they
the
had
team names
competition.
again. The Scooby Doobies.
The Scooby-Doobies, the Yogi Yahooies, and the Really Rottens. So
And
our
I remember loving that too.
Yes,
But I don't know that I
do
ever
too.
put that together.
No, I never
That's
did.
really interesting.
No idea.
Yes, it
And
was
yet, duh, of course.
Right.
Exactly. And ABC. So if you want to know who was on the Scooby-Doobies, it would have been
Yes.
characters from Scooby-Doo, Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, Dino Mutt, Dog Wonder were some of those characters. The Yogi Yahooies were characters from Yogi Bear Show, the Huckleberry Hound Show, and Quick Draw McGraw. And then the Really Rottens were just the obnoxious kind of villain characters from all of those. And they always cheated. They always cheated in the Laugh Olympics. So, and you know what? It did not include a laugh track. So how about that?
Huh.
But it was called the Laugh Olympics.
Yeah.
The Yogi
Ironic.
There you go.
Yahooies. I just like to say the Yogi Yahooies.
So we have Laugh Olympics.
Okay.
And then because we obviously spent this last hour, well, whatever, talking about Battle of the Network Stars, always aired on ABC. This was an ABC go-getter. It always premiered or debut, whatever. Hold on. Battle of the Network Stars was always on ABC. It was always the week, usually after sweeps ended on our regular season TV was over, about to get into the rerun season, and we have our fun Battle of the Network Stars, always on ABC, always a huge rate getter. Maybe there was a little jealousy on some of the other networks, so if you recall, CBS decided Circus of the Stars might be their chance to get some of our stars
one.
to dress in little leotards and fly through the sky with the greatest of ease. I don't know that they won any prizes. I think it was just more of a display of their acrobatic skills.
Did you guys like that?
I mean, yes, I did, but I didn't have the same feelings about it that I did for Battle of the Network Stars.
But I loved it.
Either.
I loved it, but I agree, yeah. I think it's the competition factor.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think that adds something to it.
It felt personal. It wasn't, because I'm the least competitive person, but it felt personal because when Penny Marshall won, I won. And you knew she was happy to win.
All right. I want everyone to buckle up because I didn't remember this, but NBC wanted to get in on the gig too.
Oh my God.
NBC aired Us Against the World.
I've
Anybody
never
remember?
heard of that.
No. What was it?
Well, let me tell you. It was Us, or US, so United States, was one team. The UK was another team, Great Britain, and then the rest of the world was the third team.
What?
Oh, God. I have so
I feel like that
many
seems
things
wrong.
to say about colonialism and like indigenous populations.
I'm uncomfortable.
I'm very uncomfortable right now. I'm very uncomfortable.
Well, I cannot believe, especially that Kristen had not seen this. I want to tell you that the show was hosted by Don Rickles, Ed McMahon, and Jack Klugman. They were the hosts. And they would have
fitting.
announced the U.S. squad. Here is who represented the U.S. in this show. We had Linda Blair, Chevy Chase, Dan Haggerty, Kate Jackson, Gabe Kaplan, Christy McNichol, Jennifer O'Neill, Rob Reiner, David Soul, and Flip Wilson.
That's serious. That is very serious.
Yes. But wait, just wait till you hear who was on the UK team.
Oh my God.
The UK squad, this team, Roger Daltrey.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Richard Dawson. Marty Feldman.
Oh my God.
Susan George. Sarah Miles. Roger Moore.
Wow.
Rod Stewart. Twiggy. And wait, the best is Andy Gibb.
Oh, I just got sad.
There was a third team. We can't forget the rest of the
right.
world.
Oh, the rest of the world.
The rest of the world.
The colonists and then the rest of the world.
I'm terrified to know who was on this team.
It had 3 Canadians were repped. Susan Clark, Rich Little was the captain, and Michael Ontkeen. They were Canadians. Then we had German-born LeVar Burton.
Oh! He was?
LeVar Burton was born in Germany, so he was on the rest
LeVar
of the world.
Burton.
Oh, I did too.
I still love LeVar Burton.
I love him so much.
Yes.
Did you know, you guys, that there's a big campaign to have him be the permanent host of Jeopardy?
That's a good choice.
That's a great
Wouldn't that
choice.
be great?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, starting with Kunta Kinte and ending with Reading Rainbow. I just love LeVar Burton.
Well, he represented the rest of the world because he was born in Germany.
In Germany.
Along with Elkie Summer.
Of course.
He
Of
and
course.
Elkie Summer.
Yes. Of course.
Then,
what about Charo?
Right.
You know what? They didn't have Charo. They did have Sergio Mendes representing Brazil.
Oh, and the Tijuana Brass.
Yes. And then Britt Eklund of Sweden. So yes, I was just floored to find this, but I can't find any video of it. I have looked really hard. So you guys, Us Against the World.
That is crazy.
I don't know, we're going to have to try to find it because...
The more you know, yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who knew?
So would this work today? Like if they did a Battle of the Network Stars today, does that even make sense?
I mean, they tried, and what was it, 2017?
They tried.
And they don't have networks, so they had to...
Right.
Listen, if they did it today, I would watch it, but who would we be watching?
Who would we even be watching? Well, and the 2017 reboot, they didn't even have current people on it. They had people from Happy Days. Happy Days was no longer a show. So that kind of answers
Didn't
our
they have like
question, I guess.
TV doctors against TV lawyers and TV? I think they did something like
White
that.
House
didn't
people versus TV.
That's not a bad idea. I'll say that's not a bad idea. That's a way you could do it. It's just that there's not a lot of network shows we watch anymore. There would have to be HBO. It'd have to be, Netflix shows.
There are too many stations. There are too many channels.
Oh gosh,
right.
Yeah.
I don't,
It's
and the
too
way
many.
the celebrity works now, I don't think it would work because nobody needs this the way that we needed it because they follow people on social media. They see their celebrity stars every day they're all together.
Right. Full circle, going back to what we said at the beginning. We watched it because it was a glimpse into their real life. And that was unusual. And it was such a unique thing to get to see.
I also don't think that celebrities today would put themselves in that risky position. I think they're their brands are far too managed. They would never, even though they say stupid things on Twitter and they have to apologize. Nonetheless, I don't think that they would want to embarrass themselves.
A lot of them would. Scott Baio would definitely get back out there.
Oh, yeah, he would. You're right. Yeah.
I think it would be all these C and D level, like the Scott Baios and the Ricky Schroders of the world would be the ones that would be out there doing it.
Mm-hmm. But we have so many choices now. How would they even figure out who to ask to be on the show? Because there isn't one single person that everybody in the household would go, oh, we love that guy. Or even we know that guy.
Right.
We don't even know all the same people.
No.
Right.
It would be like This Is Us cast against. I'm just trying to think of like the shows that people watch. And I don't know that it's universal like it was.
It's not universal.
Word I want, but that it was back then. Mm-hmm. We knew who all those people were because we knew all the shows.
Right.
Unless you got the show. It's the same as now when we watch award shows. I'm a huge award show junkie. Mm-hmm. But the past few years, I don't get as excited for them anymore as I used to because I don't know the shows.
I know.
I don't know the shows anymore that are up for all the awards, or I don't know the actors that are up, and so it's not as fun to watch for me.
And you can't root for people in the same way because you don't know who all the people are.
Yeah. So I think a new battle would be much the same for me as award shows. I'd probably still watch it, but I wouldn't enjoy it as much.
It wouldn't be the same titillating thing that it was before. There was one guy who was on. I wish I could remember who it was. Who was on the 2017 reboot, who said the same thing, that they couldn't gather people that everybody knew. And so instead of Battle of the Network Stars, he said it was like Battle of some people you may have seen on TV. Which is kind of true. That's exactly what you were describing, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think this is an example of something that could only work at a very particular moment in time. And it just happened to be our moment. Yay. Just one more reason to be a proud Gen Xer, right?
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you for listening today, and maybe go practice your side stroke in honor of Joan Van Ark.
And if you know others who loved Battle of the Network Stars and just Gen X pop culture in general, please share our podcast with them. We rely on you to keep getting heard, and for Amy Poehler and Tina Fey to eventually discover us and want to produce our show.
In the meantime, let's raise our glasses for a toast, courtesy of Jack Tripper, Janet Wood, and Chrissy Snow, who is so much more than what lies beneath her t-shirt. To good times.
To happy days.
To Little House on the Prairie.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to this Encore episode. While we are on our brief hiatus, we hope you'll take some time to explore our fun catalog of episodes. We've talked about a lot of the things that made our Gen X childhoods so memorable. And remember, make sure to follow along on social media so you don't miss some of the big announcements we have coming up in the next month. We are so excited to share with you all what we have planned.
Information, opinions, and comments expressed on the Pop Culture Preservation Society podcast belong solely to me, the Crushologist, and Carolyn and Hello Newman, and are in no way representative of our employers or affiliates. And though we truly believe we are always right, I guess there's always a first time. The PCPS is written, produced, and recorded at Modern Well, a woman-centered co-working space in Minneapolis, Minnesota, home of the fictional WJM studios and our beloved Mary Richards. Nanu Nanu, keep on truckin', and may the force be with you.
Together, we get a happy feeling when we're singing a song.